Hi guys, and welcome to my club secretary workshop. I'm Sandra Lee, your district secretary, and if you're watching this, hopefully you're either a newly installed club secretary or you're interested in becoming a club secretary in the future. So throughout this presentation, I'll be guiding you through how to become a successful club secretary. So before we begin, feel free to take out a device, a paper, or a journal or something that you can use to jot down any notes if you'd like to, but also keep in mind that this video will be accessible on the KIWIN'S channel video. KIWIN'S channel YouTube. KIWIN'S YouTube channel. So let's begin. So quick overview, I'll be talking about the basic duties of a club secretary. Then we'll be looking through a few resources that secretaries fill out on a weekly and sometimes daily basis. I'll be giving my own advice and tips, and then lastly, I'll be answering questions. So let's break down the duties of a club secretary. A club secretary has to submit the monthly report form, aka the MRF. The MRF is a Google Sheet which includes information regarding the club statistics, such as the amount of service hours earned as a club, the amount of funds raised as a club, and the total amount of meetings held. The monthly report form is usually due at the end of each month. However, that deadline is dependent on the new district secretary. And as always, the monthly report form is submitted to your lieutenant governor, aka your LTG. The purpose of the monthly report form is to inform your club as well as the district of your club's monthly progress. The club secretary also has to submit the Kiwanis family report form, aka the KRF. This KRF is created by our Kiwanis family and foundations chair. This is actually a Google form, which is a lot simpler than the MRF, and it includes several questions that aim to enhance your relationship, your club's relationship with our Kiwanis family branches. As a club secretary, you also have to oversee the club service hours and attendance. This applies to both service events as well as meetings. So at service events, it's the job of the secretary to attend and keep track of each member's service hours earned and who actually attends. So it's important that if you're unable to attend a service event as a club secretary, that you contact another fellow board member to take your place and track those hours for you. At meetings, you also have to track attendance, whether that's through a physical or a digital sign-in sheet. Lastly, a club secretary has to record meeting minutes. This is, of course, at meetings, if you couldn't already tell by the name. And these meeting minutes inform the district board, or not district board, the club board, as well as your members, of what was discussed during that meeting. And it's helpful to reference for any board members that want to see what might have been assigned or look back on any important details that were discussed. So, some more duties. The club secretary also has to complete the Membership Update Center, aka the MUC. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. The MUC is a website. Whoa, I didn't mean to rhyme earlier. But anyway, the MUC is a website that allows your club to keep track of your up-to-date paid members. So each year, members have to pay dues, usually in early October. And when they pay their dues as well as submit their membership application, that's when the secretary has to input their information into the MUC to officially record them as a paid member after they submitted both their dues and their application. And then once it's inputted into the MUC for all of the paid members, that's when it has to be sent to the district office along with the invoice. And this allows the district office to keep track of your paid members within your club, which is super helpful. Additionally, the secretary has to maintain a club roster and records. So a club roster is just a form that has information about all all of their contact information, such as their name, phone number, and email. And all that information was or is already going to be inputted in the membership update center. So there's actually an option where you can print out a roster from the MUC. So after you have inputted all of your paid members' information into the MUC, you can simply print out a roster from that website directly. A club secretary also has to have a copy of the district bylaws. The district bylaws is a document that contains several policies that we as a district must follow. And these bylaws are always accessible on the KIWIN'S website. That's at cnhkiwins.org. I'll link that website down below in the description. And then lastly, a club secretary has to communicate with their board members as well as the members within their club. It's important that the board members as well as the club are always informed and are always up to date on the club's events, fundraisers, and things like that. A club secretary can ensure that their board members are informed by sharing their monthly report form with them each month to keep them up to date with their club's progress, or sharing their meeting minutes. And it's also important that the club secretary communicates with their board members, whether that's through text or social media. So that's all I have for duties. Let's go ahead and move on to resources. So I'll be walking through a few resources that secretaries fill out on a weekly and sometimes daily basis. So from this point, I would advise that if you'd like to follow along with the links that I'll be clicking through, I also provided a link to this presentation in the description box down below. So I have a few links on this slide. This is about the monthly report form. The first link is the monthly report form template, which is a template I have designed for next term. And then I have an MRF sample that the Marina secretaries filled out this term. I thought they did exceptionally well with it, so I provided it as a sample for you guys to reference. And then lastly, a monthly report form tutorial, which I filmed a few months ago earlier in this term. So let's check out the monthly report form template. So I'm only going to be walking you guys through the template. It's important that you guys don't make any edits or save this as your own file, because we do not know yet whether or not you'll be using this template this term. That's again dependent on the newly elected district secretary. So he or she may or may not use this template that I created. So let's break down the MRF. The MRF is split up into 3 different tabs. The first tab is the service log. This allows you to keep track of your members' service hours. So after writing down your members' service hours at an event, you can simply transfer it to this MRF or directly write in it during the event. And so how does this service log work? The first column, column A, is where you write down the members' names. And then in this row right here, this is where you write the event name. And then right below the event name is the date of the event. And then below that is where you input the hours for each member. So wherever the member name is written, the row corresponding to that are their service hours. And then I have inputted a formula into this column right here. And this formula automatically calculates all of the hours that each member has served. So it gives you the total that the member served corresponding to their name. And that's it for the service log. The next tab is the club statistics. So from this point, it's important that you only write in the shaded sections. So first off, we're going to read through a few of the reminders. And the reminders are written in these little white and black boxes right here. So the first reminder is that your club monthly report form is due at the last day of every month and must be sent to Lieutenant Governor, and highly recommended that to also share it with your club board as well, as I mentioned earlier, with keeping them informed and up to date. The second reminder says that, as I mentioned earlier, the only cells you should be editing in are the lightly shaded in cells. For example, these cells, and hopefully you get the idea. And make sure that you do not edit any other cells. For example, do not try to edit this cell. It is not lightly shaded. And only input numbers into the blue cells, because that will affect the calculations that I have inputted into the MRF. The third reminder says that your answers in Table B must be changed before each submission of your club MRF submissions, and to mark the appropriate cell with an X. So the reason why it has to be changed after you submit it each month is because there is only one table. So you're advised to, of course, delete your answers at the end of each month. And the last reminder says that it is highly recommended that Table C is filled out after discussing your club goals with your club board. Meet in the summer or the beginning of the term to discuss your club goals and complete Table C. So Table C includes information regarding your club goals, such as membership, service hours, PTP funds, governor project funds, and other funds. So like I mentioned in the reminder, it's important that you set a time to meet with your club board and actually set goals for these actual number goals for all of the goals listed in Table C. That way there's something your club can aim for throughout the year. So now that I've gotten through the reminders, let's go through the rest of this MRF. So we'll go through table by table. Table A is general information, pretty self-explanatory. Just input your division name and then your name and the name of your co-secretary if applicable. And then table B is answering questions about communication, marking X for whether or not you contacted your LTG, whether or not you need help finding a service event, or whether or not you turned in your MRF on time. And then like I mentioned earlier, table C is the club goals table. This allows you to keep track of your club goals and your progress towards completing those goals. So you input your club goals once they're determined in this first column where it says club goal. And then each month you're going to have to input your membership status, because that'll change each month. That way it's kept up to date. And then the service hours and everything else, such as funds, will be automatically inputted based on what you input later down in the blue tables. And then in this last column, a % complete will be shown. This is a percentage that shows how much you've completed towards your goal. So it's basically just your current status divided by your total goal. So let's move on to the next tables. These are the bigger ones. These are the club statistics tables, and I couldn't fit both of them into one large table, otherwise you'd have to scroll too far, so I divided them into two. The first table is regarding information about your club membership, meetings, KFAM projects, and lastly, future projects. So each month has its own row. So for the month of April, you would input the total amount of members you have that month. And then you would input the total amount of general meetings you had in April, total amount of board meetings you had, and other meetings. Other meetings could include DCMs, spirit nights, things like that. Next, you would include the amount of KFAM projects you held in April. KFAM projects are any service events that you held with any of our Kiwanis branches, such as Key Club, Kiwanis, K-Kids, Action Club, so on. And then the amount of hours earned from those projects. And then lastly, number of future projects. These are just any service events that you'll be holding next month. And then to the right of this block column, you have total number of service hours and funds. These are automatically calculated based on what you input for both of these data tables. It just gives you the total amount of service hours and total amount of funds raised. And now we'll move on to the next table, Club Statistics 2. This is the same thing, but data. So again, each row is each month of the term. And so for the first column, you would input the total amount of projects focused on major emphasis, PTP, live to learn, in April, and then the amount of hours earned from those major emphasis projects. And then the total amount of governors projects in April, the total amount of hours earned, fundraisers, amount raised for governors project, and then the same applies for our minor emphasis, which is PTP. And then the same applies for a number of other as well. So all the information that you input for this table regarding projects, hours earned, fundraisers, and amount of money raised from those fundraisers, that is all automatically added together and calculated into this right here. Like I mentioned earlier, the total number of service hours and total number of funds. They're just broken down into our emphases in the second table right here. And I forgot to mention this in the other table, but below in the last row of each table, there's cumulatives, so it adds up each column. And that's it for the club statistics tab of the MRF. So let's move on to the very last and easiest tab, the club narratives. The club narratives is pretty simple. Each month, you basically are expected to input any questions, concerns, or comments that you have for the executive board or just in general. And you just do that for each month. So after you have filled out information for each month, you, like I said earlier, just submit it to your LTG. And that's it for the monthly report form. Hopefully that was simple. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments down below, and I'll answer when I can get to them. So let's move on to the next resource. It's the meeting minutes. So I provided a template for both club meetings as well as board meetings. So club meetings are just general meetings that are held with all of the members within your club. This is held to update them and inform them on upcoming service events, fundraisers, and announcements. And then board meetings are held with the board members within your club to basically plan all of the events and meetings of your club. And so I provided a template that you don't have to use, but feel free to reference or use if you'd like to. We'll quickly look through the club meeting template as well as the board meeting template. And then as a reference, I provided a sample for both of them from my term as a club secretary last term. Let's check out the club meeting minutes. This is the template that I followed as a club secretary. We can ignore that. So the club meeting minutes are pretty simple. It just includes information such as the date, location, who called the meeting to order, who led the Key Club pledge, and then taking attendance. Also talking about future and past events, and then announcements. So this is a pretty general and basic template. You can, of course, make a copy of this and adjust it to your club style or whatever works for your system. That's basically the club meeting minutes. These are the board meeting minutes. So these are basically the same as well. There isn't much different except the attendance is, I'm not sure why these are all in the trash. The attendance is just the board members. And then the topics discussed are essentially the same as a club meeting minute. So yeah, that's it for club and board meeting minutes. Let's move on to the next resources, which is the MUC, aka the Membership Update Center. So I actually provided an MUC tutorial, which I created with the district treasurer earlier in this term, and we discussed and walked through the MUC. So I highly advise that you check that out on your own because it actually is a lot It discusses how you can log in, the importance of the MUC, as well as how to fill it out, and all of that good stuff. So I highly recommend that you check that out. It's a super helpful video. And while you're watching the tutorial video, I advise that you also click through the MUC website at the same time. That way you can get familiar with it before the new school year comes. So I believe that's all I have for resources. So lastly, a few advice and tips. Organization is key. It's important to stay organized, both with your physical files as well as digital. As a secretary, you have to maintain several records, so it's important that you're able to keep track of those and make sure they're organized. You can easily access and find them. It's important that you keep yourself organized, whether that's managing your time or setting aside time to complete your duties and tasks as a secretary. Additionally, make sure that you use anything that you have available, whether it's a bullet journal to keep track of your tasks, whether it's a digital calendar to keep track of the events and scheduled calls that you have, or using things like sticky notes to make notes of little important things like an upcoming event or meeting. Also, do not procrastinate. For example, when you're filling out the MRF, if it's due on the last day of the month, instead of filling it out the day before, fill out the MRF throughout the month. That way, when you're done with the last service event of that month, you can turn in the MRF right away, rather than waiting till last minute. And then my next tip/advice is that it's okay to not know everything. When I initially became a club secretary, I definitely was not informed of all the duties until I actually got into the job and learned along the way. And lastly, you are not alone. Feel free to reach out to me, even though I'll be retired. Reach out to your newly elected district secretary, or even reach out to your board members, because they're always there for you, and I for sure know that they're willing to help you. And that's all I have for my secretary presentation. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact me at KIWIN'S.dsec@gmail.com. That email might not be applicable anymore because it'll be passed down to the newly elected club secretary, which is also helpful. And then my phone number is 805-825-8616. And thank you guys for coming to my workshop. Hope you guys thought it was helpful.